Hey, welcome back to the Trash Picture Show. This is my third video on my graphic novel collection, and I'm going to continue with James O'Barr's The Crow Skinning the Wolves. This is his follow-up to the original. There has been other Crow comics, but I don't think Barr was involved. This one's interesting, and I think it's graphically beautiful, but it's also graphically messed up. It's about a musician who's sent to a concentration camp. His wife and daughter are killed, and he comes back from the dead to wreak revenge. Brilliant comic. Jim Terry's artwork is amazing. The original, the one that started it all, the Underground, The Crow, James O'Barr. O'Barr suffered a tragedy, and as a result he produced the comic. And I think that's the strongest axis, but it's also its weakest. I think unless you can get an emotional connection with the book, it might fall flat with you. But the artwork is really nice, and you do have a touching story of this man who's tormented by the loss of a loved one, and he's angry and he's out for revenge. Next up we have Infestation. This was a two-part comic. The second part had Transformers and G.I. Joe. This volume I have has Ghostbusters and Star Trek, and it's basically a zombie virus travels from dimension to dimension and wreaks a bunch of havoc. My favourite story is the Ghostbusters one. I love the artwork in that one. Next up we have Jericho Season 3. Interesting comic. The artwork isn't great because the artist seems to be more focused on getting the characters to look like their television counterparts, and as a result I think everything else suffers. If you're a fan of Jericho, maybe pick it up, but if you're a casual comic book fan, maybe give this one a miss. James Stokoe's Godzilla in Hell. Love this comic. I've done an overview of it before, and the artwork is amazing. Next up we have Ed Brubaker's Incognito. Love this comic. There's part 1 and part 2. Bad Influences is part 2. Essentially you have a supervillain who goes into witness protection, and he's bored out of his fucking mind because he's given a drug to suppress his powers, and because he's bored he starts doing weed. That negates the drug and he gets his powers back, but rather than being a supervillain again, he tries his hand at being a superhero and fucking hates it. If you get a chance, this is a fantastic comic. Ed Brubaker knocks it out of the park. Farscape graphic novel. This is Boom Studios. They do a lot of movie and TV tie-in. Cool comic, cool story, but it does suffer the same thing as the Jericho comic, that the art suffers because the artist's trying too hard to make him look like the TV equivalent. Planet of the Apes. This is the start of a new series. It's called The Lawn War. I think it's set right after Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, so if you get a chance, check it out. Alan Moore's awesome League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Kevin O'Neill's artwork is amazing, and you have one of the best lineup characters in an Alan Moore comic. You can tell that there's great love and detail for these stories, and the movie's pants, so ignore it. Friday the 13th, classic slasher kind of Wildstorm take. Really like the art, and it does Jason Voorhees a great justice. Team Zero, very Dirty Dozen kind of story. It's the origin of all the Wildstorm teams like Grifter and Deathblow. There's a bunch of other guys, but yeah, the artwork is pretty awesome. Another Ed Brubaker story, very like Incognito. It's about a guy who's undercover with supervillains, and he's trying to take them out. Interesting book, and yeah, Brubaker is really good at doing kind of pulp crime. Next up, my 2000 AD books. Durham Red. I went over this book before. She is awesome. She is a vampire kind of assassin, and you can't go wrong. Button Man, a very kind of, how would I say it, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy kind of storyline in the 2000 AD universe. Well worth a check. Defoe is essentially a team of zombie and monster hunters in the Victorian era London. Pretty cool, and if you like kind of steampunk, give it a look. Artwork's amazing. Fucking Shaco. I love Shaco. Killer polar bear decides he ain't fucking taking no more, and he's out to kill people. Pat Mills, John Wagner, Roman Sola, and Joel Acarnio. My favourite 2000 AD story, Flesh. Cowboys versus dinosaurs. Great story, great action, and great artwork. Slain, Demon Killer. I think this was included in my big hardback edition, but again, you can't go wrong with the art. Pat Mills, Glenn Fabry, Greg Staples, and Dermot Power. Fantastic job. Fiends of the Western Front, Vampires in World War II, with a slight helping of Michael Mann's The Keep. Really like the artwork in this one. Jerry Flynn Day, Dave Bishop, Carlos Esquera, and Colin Marcel. Next up we have Judge Dredd vs. Aliens. Love this crossover. John Wagner, Andy Diggle, and Henry Flint. The artwork is amazing, and for some reason Simon Pegg does the intro to this. Basically the Geordie version of E.T. Skiz, you cannot go wrong with this comic. This comic kicks ass. A friendly alien lands in the middle of Birmingham and in the 80s and befriends a girl, and there's hijinks to sue, and there's some really nice characters, and it's got a hell of a lot of heart. It's weird to see Alan Moore do something a bit more subtle than his usual stuff. Speaking of Alan Moore, his Future Shocks, great collection of stories. If you like weird anthology series, I highly recommend it. There's also contributions from Brian Talbot, Ian Gibson, Steve Dillon, and Brendan McCarthy, so well worth a look. Now, next up I have these books. These are going to be my DC and DC Vertigo books, and I'm going to start off with my favourite one, Garth Ennis's first comic, True Fate. A very, very interesting, very messed up comic about a young man who is like, he doesn't know what to believe in, so he ends up joining forces with a kind of really angry young man, angry kind of plumber who lost his wife, and as a result has started burning down churches. Next up we have Constantine, Hellblazer. I like the Garth Ennis ones. I think they're the best. My favourite one has to be Rake at the Gates of Hell and Dangerous Habits. I have them. There are other versions. I'm not too gone on. Mike Carey does a good job and the artwork is interesting, but I will always have a soft spot for Garth Ennis's books. Next up we have Doom Patrol, Grant Morrison. Crazy as fuck, but what you expect is Grant Morrison. Next up we have the reboot of The Unknown Soldier. This one is actually set in Sudan, and it's about a man who he's trying to avenge the death of, I think, his wife and a bunch of children he was looking after. And it's a really interesting take and a really interesting reboot of the series. We have Garth Ennis's Unknown Soldier, which is really fucked up, and the artwork by Killian Plunkett really adds to the story. Sandman, if you're a Neil Gaiman fan, the Sandman comics are great, but they're not for your casual comic reader. Preludes and Nocturnes, I have that one, and The Doll's House. I also think I have I have the Kindly ones as well, and some really nice artwork in the Sandman comics.